We'd like to welcome you to the Heart Leader Podcast, where heart and mind align. I'm your host, Amber, and I'm here with co-host Austin, and we'd like to know, do you have a passion to make a greater global impact? Are you ready to embrace leading with heart and love? If so, join us on this journey to become heart leaders who change the world. Each episode brings heart-centered connection, building stronger relationships, communities, and businesses. Let's take a deeper dive into what it means to be heart leaders. The Heart Leader Podcast starts now. Hi, and welcome to the Heart Leader Podcast. I am your host, Amber, and I am here today with co-host Austin, and we are kicking off a new month in a new year. And with that at heart, we wanted to take some time to really feel through this month's theme. So we thought, what better theme and what better heart leader attribute to talk about than authenticity? Because the whole new year typically brings around so many advertisements around new year, new you, and this desire to recreate ourselves with resolutions. And so Austin and I really wanted to take some time to discuss that. And what are some of the benefits of that? And what are maybe some of the things that we could take a step back from and observe that really create patterns that might not be serving us, especially as heart leaders around that space. So thank you for tuning in as we have this discussion. And we would love to hear from you too. If you have any feelings or thoughts or experiences that you have around this area, please be certain to include it in comments below. Send us emails. We love hearing stories so that we can incorporate it into any kind of future podcasts, or really just start a dialogue and share it within our community. So with that, Austin,
yes,
when we've been talking about authenticity, and especially around this new year, new you, I'm already starting to get those campaigns in my inbox. It isn't even January yet.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot of, hey, here's the opportunity. Reinvent yourself. Every New Year's resolution counts. I know how it hits me, but I would love to hear how that hits you. What do you feel when that comes into your inbox?
Bombarded. Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a few years now, for sure. I mean, obviously growing up, I really didn't look into my email too much until I got to about college, right? But so for the last good 15 years, yeah, I mean, it seems to be pretty much a repeat of the same things. And I think the interesting thing is I wasn't really too aware of that, that pattern until just a few years ago. And to me, it did feel like a new year, and I was actually really excited for a new me because I was so focused on reinventing myself that I was like, okay, I can wipe the slate clean and I can start fresh and I can create who I am, which at heart is nice.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
It is. But I didn't realize some of the fundamental flaws that inherently created, which caused me to not execute those or create long-term results.
Yeah, because what we end up doing is, or at least I can speak for myself, I can't necessarily speak for how it impacts others other than the clients that I've had or others that I've talked to. It does seem to be almost like a repeat pattern.
Yeah.
But we start looking outside of ourselves. All right, here's this membership special that will allow me to lose this much weight. And everything is from the outside coming in. How do I plug into something that will give me a result instead of taking the time to authentically ask myself, what do I desire? who am I? I know it kind of sounds like a very cliche kind of thing, but it has to start from that question. Who am I? What do I desire my year to look like? What are my intentions for the year? And if it is weight loss, that's great, but not because something from the outside told me to, but because that's what I feel like I need in order to feel better, in order to be healthier. All of these things, because if you don't know authentically from within why that is meaningful for you, then your chances of succeeding in that resolution are very slim.
Right.
Like, what is the driving intention? What is the purpose? What is the meaningful purpose in your life? And so I know I did it over and over again, year after year after year in my life. I would set these resolutions.
Yeah.
But I would do it because that's what everyone around me was doing. And it was like, okay, they're going to ask me, what's your resolution this year?
Right.
And if I didn't have one, then I wasn't going to be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so it didn't really come from that authentic, what do I want this year? And it was always about what I would call a new mask. Like, what mask did I want to wear this year?
Yeah.
Who did I desire to pretend to be this year? So I was always reinventing, always creating a new part of me, which fundamentally, as you said, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if it's not coming from that knowing of self, then eventually you start to lose sight of who you actually are, because you have like 15 different masks that you're wearing.
Right.
And none of them really seem to fit.
I mean, it just boils down to something really simple. You can't be authentic from the outside to the in.
Exactly.
You just can't. You can attempt to, and I spent many years cycling in that. And you can get close or get what you feel. But what I caught myself getting into the pattern was that I was so busy thinking about, what would everyone else want to see me do? And that was a very unintentionally, personally destructive approach. No wonder I couldn't actually accomplish or execute on that long term, because my idea of what I thought someone else would want of me or from me or with me, I mean, for one, there was no way it could actually be that, because I don't know what they're thinking. And two, my idea of that just kept changing. And so I just felt like I was always a step behind. And then I just kept disappointing and getting disappointed, not realizing that I was the one disappointing myself through that process.
Yeah, and then it becomes this self-destructive
Yes.
pattern. And I know we've talked about it, like when I met you, there was this depression that was kind of in the background. And I know I navigated that a little bit in my own life, where when I didn't know who I was and I was reinventing myself all of the time in order to do exactly what we were talking about here, which is fit what I thought those around me, even those that I loved the most, right? You're doing your best, but if you're creating who you are in order to satisfy them, then I finally figured out I was denying them the opportunity to actually know me.
Such a great point.
They had no idea who I was because I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And they love me. They want to know me. But I couldn't show up like that for them after a while. And then they got confused because they would see me in this scenario and I was this way, and then they would see me in that scenario, and I had created an aspect of myself that fit into that scenario, much like you had discussed, you had done, not out of a desire to be deceptive at all. Actually, that was who I authentically thought I was, this person in business, this person in my personal life, this person in my social life, And they were very different because every year I was recreating a new part of me. And that fit into that category and that category. Again, none of them were wrong, but none of them were me. They just fit scenarios. They were masks. And every one of them kept every person far enough away from me that nobody got to know me.
Right.
Because I didn't. And so this whole focus that we're really setting into motion this month, this new year, be you, is coming from that place of, first you have to get to know who you are. And that means authentically asking yourself questions about what you desire in life, what you believe to be true for you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't take information from those around you, right? And you have some great insights into that, but that you don't automatically morph to it like a chameleon.
Right.
So can you share some of, because you've kind of navigated all that so recently that it's very fresh for you. How would you offer somebody in a personal scenario? And we'll talk about business here soon, because this applies in business as much as it applies in personal and in social and in like career development. But just in the personal aspect, how do you do that?
Definitely. First and foremost, I feel like it was recognizing that I can't authentically be myself if I'm so parsed out. Those are two conflicting ideologies. One is solid and one is ever changing. And so if I'm attempting to fit this ever changing idea of myself and shoehorn that into being a solid foundation, it's just never going to work, because that foundation is just, it's too weak. It's too fluctuating, and it's just going to crumble. And that's really what happened to me. So it wasn't until I kind of flipped it on the other side and really focused on building that strong foundation. What is one self? What is Austin? Who is Austin? What represents Austin in that sense? And how do I get to know myself? Because I'm not creating me. I already am me. That was a crazy one to kind of, for a while, that just went straight over my head. Why am I so busy creating when I already am who I am?
Can you share a little bit about what that means? Because I do feel like for a lot of us, that's like, okay, that's great philosophically. And if I was in some retreat somewhere, that just sounds like some great stuff to hear. But in everyday life, what the heck does it mean to not create me, that I am me?
Right.
So give us some practical, what the heck does that mean?
So practical application is that sometimes I was so stuck in my head, and to be honest, not sometimes, pretty much all the time, I was so stuck in my head that when a situation arose, I would do my best to quickly think about how I would react or respond to the situation.
Or what the right way.
Yes.
Yes.
How have I been taught? If I do this, how will it show to other people? How will I be represented to those other people? And am I representing my family well? Am I representing, all that I aspire to be well? Is this quote unquote on brand?
Yes.
And so, we talk about a quick way to get lost, because you're so stuck up here that you completely lose the heart, you lose the compassion, you lose the very essence of who you are, because you're so busy thinking about who you should be that you're not allowing yourself to just be. And that gets back to our consistent talk about that we're not human doings, we're human beings. And oftentimes our best response is the one that we're not thinking about it, we're just being ourselves. The more that we allow ourselves to be, then we no longer have to think about it, it just becomes who we are. We're not creating ourselves, we are actually allowing ourselves to be who we are, the very essence of our soul. allowing this manifestation of ourselves in this physical form to represent all that we have to offer, which I can tell you for each and every individual is an immense amount.
Yes.
And not from the cliche approach, but from the reality that there is no one else on earth exactly like you, experiencing the earth exactly like you. Yeah. It's just, I know it's hard for us to comprehend. And I thought, oh, that's really cliche in the beginning, right? You know, oh, you're unique, you're a special one. And I kind of brushed it off and just was like, yeah, you know, sure. Uh-huh. But when you really take the time to sit with it and you start to value yourself from that perspective, not from ego, but from actually valuing the self, that you're recognizing who you actually are, man, does that open up the door for you to start to recognize and see others for who they are in that same light.
Yes.
And then you're bringing authenticity out into everything that you're doing. You're not thinking about how you should do this or how that should be or how I should represent this. You just are.
Yeah. We talk about it like the puzzle pieces all the time, right?
Yeah.
And when I think about authenticity and being who you are authentically, it's like honoring the piece of the puzzle that you are. Because I know when I was attempting to be like everyone else and not me, I was not. Like, I'm taking on their piece of the puzzle, and then suddenly they didn't fit because I was being their piece. So then where do they fit in if I'm being their piece? And that's what we tend to do very often, is suddenly we all want to be the unique piece that somebody else is, and then none of us feel like we fit together because we have thousands of the same piece, and we're not all being our own unique piece so that we can create this beautiful picture that is our human collective, where we're all bringing something so beautiful and so wonderful. And if we just did that, if we all said to ourselves, like, I'm my own beautiful, unique piece of this puzzle, and I'm going to bring forward what I'm meant to bring forward from God, from consciousness, from however you view that flow, then imagine what this world would look like. Just imagine it.
It's such a good analogy. I mean, the very visual that pops up when you explain that is that, and I know I was stuck in this when I wanted to be someone else's piece, or I wanted to be that piece. Mm-hmm. And even just hearing it now, it just kind of really, it really resonates from the fact that what that does is unintentionally creates competition. And then the byproduct, the result of that competition is that it leaves the whole picture empty. There are going to be spaces because that piece no longer is going to fit there.
Yes.
But when we are our own authentic piece, we are that one unique piece, then the whole picture fits. Yeah. There are no holes, there are no competition. It is a harmony, which creates a beautiful picture.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really, really good.
Well, thank you. And, when you say competition, there might be some people who go, well, wait a second, I like competition.
Right.
It fuels me. It actually helps me embrace being my authentic self. So what would you say to that, giving you that opportunity to respond? Because to some, competition is actually a healthy thing. Mm-hmm. So how would you respond to that?
Great question. I wouldn't disagree. I guess the question is, where's the intent behind the competition? If it continues to be an outside to in to define self, then as we talked about earlier, it's just an empty void. If that competition can be within self, if I'm competing to be the very best version of myself every day, then I'm no longer outside of who I am. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't get ideas from those around me. It would be egotistical for me, for example, to say, oh, I know everything, and I've experienced everything, and I'm just going to be that. That's not true. So I can still take bits and pieces in understandings and experiences or life lessons from others around me and say, okay, well, they had that experience, and I can honor them for that. And I can say, okay, what did they take from that? And how can I learn from my perspective, my point of view, my version of self? How would I authentically embrace that experience to enhance who I am?
Yeah. So in many ways, it's redefining success and allowing competition to be that inside to out. Like
Right.
we talk about it a little bit. I know when we first started out, like competition doesn't have to be competing with another person.
Yeah.
Although in a sport or in anything, it may be that you're in that situation where you are competing in that way. But as long as you always look at it as I'm competing to be better than I was yesterday, and then the natural outcome may be that I end up being the best at what I do,
Yeah.
then that's a byproduct of you seeking to be better than you were yesterday. That isn't I'm out to get that person or be better than that person, because then that creates division,
Right.
an unnecessary division. And for many of us, that isn't authentically where it's coming from. That ends up being when we start going outside to in, when ego starts to take over. But if it is that natural outcome of inside to out, where it's I'm seeking to be better each and every day at something I'm passionate about, something that is an authentic part of myself. And I know when we talked to Ale, that was one of the things that she talked about, was in the field of golf. It is a very individualized mental sport, and that's something that you are very well versed in. Like you were going to go pro at one point in your life. And to be your authentic self, you are never someone who competed. But competition seemed to be thrust on you.
Right.
And so that was part of what created that breakdown. So for anyone who is saying, okay, so I'm defining my authentic self, I'm in a space where competition is part of the field that I'm in, but it doesn't resonate as authentic for me. There is a way to come at competition and have it be something that you can take part in, but not have it be a defining part of you.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
I would. Yeah. I mean, you can still approach competition from that outside in, but not make it be a part of your identity. Because it can serve a purpose. It can have an intention. But when we understand ourselves from this individualized perspective, that it's from the inside to the out, in all honesty, that may fall away, that first part that we just discussed. There won't be a need to compare or anything along those lines. And if you look at some of the best athletes, some of the best companies, just some of the best individuals that are out there, they're always talking about how their focus and even their data-driven focus is on their own numbers. What did they do yesterday? What did they do in the last month? What did they do in the last year? What did they do in the last 10 years? And then creating projections of that self. How can I grow? How can I keep getting, is it 1% better every day? Is it 10% better? Is it 100%? I mean, I don't know. Maybe, who knows? There's potential for anything. But I feel like where people get lost in this understanding of how to create a practical application of this connection, understanding of self, stems from humanity's misunderstanding of perfection. And that's I know that one really hit hard for me, and I could probably speak for a lot of people in that area. That perfection tends to almost be debilitating in its need to produce results and how we have to fit in the mold of perfection. And when it came to competition, and when it even came to being me, I was so caught up in the idea of being perfect all the time that I did crumble. I lost every sense of myself because the perfection that we truly experience, that I understand now, is not in the result, but in the process. To me, perfection has been defined and remains to be defined in the sense that the fact that I get to keep being a better version of myself every day, that process to me is perfect.
Yeah.
That's a gift.
And as you always say, perfection equals stagnation. There's
Right?
really nowhere to go
No, you're
once
so
you've
right.
achieved perfection. But it is a goal to strive toward that keeps us moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I love where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't let that be what breaks you
Right.
if you aren't perfect.
Right. And if you're stuck in the results, then it will yield stagnation. But if you're focused and intention in the process, then that will allow for the unfolding of the greatest version of the grandest vision of yourself in all aspects.
Yeah. So tying that back to this whole new year approach, right? Because we're heading toward that, or we're actually in that. Yeah,
Yes.
at this
Yes.
point we're in that. And there are so many people who are at this point setting New Year's resolutions, who are committing to really being on that track for, I'm going to do this, and potentially have already set some that are outside to in.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're seeking perfection in that, that's the moment, again, speaking for myself, when I wasn't perfect at achieving my resolution, when I wasn't perfect at achieving my goal, because it was outside in and I didn't authentically know why it mattered to me, that's when, come February, they started to fall away.
Yes.
Right? And so I know the moment it started to switch for me was when I stopped looking outside of myself. And this goes for business as much as it goes for personal. Within my business, every year we would sit and we would look at our business plan. Now, this would happen before the new year started, but we would take a look toward the end of the calendar year before. What are we going to do with our business? How is this going to grow? How is this going to scale? What does this mean? And again, we would always look outside. What are others doing? What's a comparative analysis within our market? And it wasn't until you and I both stopped and said, but what we want to do isn't like what anybody else is doing. It's great to look at the data outside of ourselves, but we cannot define ourselves by that. We have to start being willing to say, how are we going to be better than we were this year? And how are we going to pave the way for something different next year? And do that from the authentic place that is us.
Yeah.
That is who we are. So when somebody starts asking us questions about why did you do that? And where is this coming from? We could stand up and say, it's this. And we are passionate about it because it's this. Not because, well, this is where it's going in the market and this is what the numbers project. But because our hearts were 10,000% into it. And we knew that we could stay passionate about it the entire year.
Right.
And the same held true for any personal items I was putting on that resolution list. How much time was I going to spend on self-care? Period. Because I knew that I mattered. And what I tended to do was get so passionate about what we were doing with the business that I started to neglect my personal self-care.
Yeah.
So my resolution had to be around self-care. And I would start to incorporate that and put that on my calendar. So I knew that I mattered. That was my resolution. Not that I needed to lose a certain amount of weight or gain a certain amount of weight. It was, how was I going to nurture and care for myself? And then the byproduct would be one or the other, however that aligned for my body.
I love that. I mean, that what you just did was define a process, not a result. And again, as we were talking about, that perfection then becomes the process.
Yeah.
The ability to be ever expanding. And as we talk about, that's in alignment with the universe, which is always expanding. And so when we are focused in that way and our intentions are set in that way, the results could be even greater than we imagined. And anyone who has achieved exponential results never did it doing what everyone else did. Not once.
Yeah.
They can't, or else they wouldn't be that one, right?
Yeah.
So when we can believe in ourselves and understand and have that conviction and passion into who we are, and then allow that to unfold into our doing, then that becomes that in to out approach. Then that byproduct of the results will fall into place.
Yes. And again, it does not take away those outside of you, because that becomes your support. But they cannot support us. They cannot support you if they don't know you.
Yeah.
And they don't know what you truly desire. At that point, they can tell that something's off, but they don't know how to support the authentic you. And so, again, so important to listen and to gain insight, but don't take it on as your own, and then be willing to share, this is where I'm at. And I would like for you to support me from this place. I'm not going to tell you what to do either. I will share my views, and you can incorporate it as it fits for you authentically. And then I ask you to share with me how I can best support you from that authentic place.
Right.
And suddenly you begin to attract individuals that are the puzzle fitting pieces. And I know even within our organization, we have really started to do that, where we are aligning with other like-minded organizations, like-hearted organizations that are really starting to bond together and bind together to create something so much larger than we ever anticipated. But it's because we knew what piece of the puzzle we were.
That's so important. And I feel like that brings up one more part that I feel maybe is debilitating, and that's this pressure that we feel that we have to be everything to everyone. And I feel like that leads to a lot of perceived failure.
Yes, great point.
Because we're so busy attempting to be, and it may not even be from a place of competition. We may just care so much about those around us that we are attempting to be these other puzzle pieces, not realizing that the one that matters to the entire puzzle is the one piece that we are. And so unintentionally, we're being those other pieces. And then we lose ourselves through that process. And, I have a lot of compassion and empathy for those, as someone who really struggled with that. Wanting to be everything for everyone around me. And you can't win.
Yeah.
You can't win.
And it's coming from a sincere place of love.
It really is. What would you say to someone who's stuck in that cycle. That could help them bring more intention to their goals, not just this year, but to create long-term results for them. But maybe they need to start this year.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah, one step at a time, exactly. Yeah, what would you say to help them?
Yeah, it's such a great question because it can seem overwhelming and like you're gonna fail somebody that you love so much if you're not everything to them. But long term, it's not a sustainable approach. And so I would say that it's important to honor the roles that you are, the key parts that you can fulfill, so that they can clearly understand what you are able to be there for. Because where you are not able to support them fully, potentially in the way that they're asking, maybe you're just projecting that that's what they need. Oftentimes we do that. We step up and we start providing so much to someone that they didn't even ask for. And we talked about this on a previous podcast. Like when we first got together in a partnership, you were so eager to be so helpful. But many of those ways were ways that I didn't even necessarily need or ask for. But it was out of this loving place where you were like, let me do this and let me do this and let me do this. But it was because you were projecting that that's what I needed from your past and not from our present. And we do that so often. We bring our past into our present connections. And we start to feel like, oh, well, I need to do this, and I need to be this and this and this and this for this person. But we may not necessarily need to be these things, all of these things for this person. So if we can stop, pull back, understand who we actually are, and then have that discussion with the person saying, okay, I love you, always expressing, like the base is I'm coming from a place of love. But I know that I have been all of these things. Now, in order for my own self-development, this is where I am. Do you have a need for all of these other things, or do you not? And if they express that they do, then there's where you begin the conversation. Right?
Definitely. And what a way to show the other person that you're seeing them for who they are. You're seeing their authentic self. And that in turn will just lead to a deeper relationship. Whether that's a friend, a family, loved one, a partner. That inherently is depth. And when we are attempting, as you were saying, we are attempting to project that they may need this, we're actually approaching it from a very surface level. No wonder we're not finding the depth.
Yeah.
So when we can see that, and I love what you're saying, when we can ask, how can we support you? Or how can I support you while still seeing you for the authentic person you are and bring the very best out of who you are? Oh, man.
While still being my authentic self.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say.
It isn't an either or.
And what a question to ask yourself. How can I support me while still being the most authentic self that I can be?
Yeah.
Man, that's the habits that we know aren't beneficial will kind of stick out like a sore thumb in that sense, right? Because we know we do them knowingly in many ways, but it's hard to hide behind that question, huh?
Yeah, and that's why I do always go back to that puzzle.
Yeah.
Because again, if we're attempting to force two pieces together by projecting and pretending, then that clear of a conversation, you can't continue to pretend and force. And sometimes that's what it boils down to. Again, I'm going to say in business and relationships and all of it, if you are willing to have authentic, vulnerable, clear conversations, then so much can be cleared up and understood. And then you know where to go from there. But it has to be that you're willing to have those conversations. And I know one of the items that we're giving away this month is the intention journal. So that if you're heading into one of those conversations, you clearly can outline the intentions that you desire to communicate. Or even every day, if you're creating these authentic movements forward, whether it's through resolutions or just in every day, setting your intentions for what you desire to create through anything in the year, you can every day set your intentions. And you had mentioned how important intentions are. Intentions set the tone energetically, thought-driven wise, through our feelings. It all comes down to intentions. So when we can get them clearly defined, it's so helpful. And taking a few minutes at the start of every day is a beautiful way to do that.
Right. It's a great point. And we can start small. It doesn't need to be big. If we just do one small thing, if we get 1% better every day, in 100 days, we're 100% better than where we just were. And with there's being more than 300 days in a year, that's a lot of opportunity for growth in 1 year. We all understand that things compound over time. So that's just exponential growth. But when you have that intention, you're able to do something small every single day that can add up so quick.
Yeah. So I know I've talked a little bit about the business aspect, and we've touched on other relationships outside of just partnerships. But for you, when it comes to business and friendships, how important is authenticity, or where do you see it plugging in?
It's really key. I mean, of course. I spend so much of my time in my teens and 20s living inauthentically. Of course, not intentionally. I just didn't know any better. And I probably ended up pushing people away on purpose without really knowing that that was what I was doing. I was afraid about depth. I was afraid about commitment, and I was afraid about what all that meant. And it stemmed from the fact that I couldn't even commit to authentically knowing myself. And so any type of relationship, I pushed. And it was coming, unfortunately, from a place of fear of not knowing myself. And I probably, unfortunately, ruined some relationships through that process. Hurt some people unintentionally. You know, I reflect now and, it still pains me, of course. And saying I didn't know any better, it doesn't fix it, but it is a reality. But all I can do is be in a place where I have that awareness now, and I can make a different choice in the relationships that I do have. I can bring the very best of myself because I do know who I am, and that is a part of my process every single day. knowing that I'm not going to be the same person now as I will be in 20 years, or maybe not even in 20 days. But again, it's not the result that's in the relationship or in the family or in how we interact with each other. It's in the process. And I know that no matter, the more I become myself, the more I have to offer and give. And that's where authenticity plays a massive, massive part. And I guess to me, the result has been happiness. It has been true depth. I mean, it's led to us having the incredible relationship that we do. I get to experience a greater capacity of love through the relationship that we have than I ever knew was possible. And because of that, I then get to share that with my parents, and I get to provide more love to them than I ever had was possible. And with my friends and business relationships and anyone and everyone around me. I mean, that's what I'm dedicated to, because I passionately desire to provide that type of love for myself. Not from ego, but from true, authentic, what I feel is divine love. And that is a gift that has fundamentally altered the way that I approach life.
And that's such a beautiful thing. But I know for many people that would sound scary.
Sure.
Right? That's just not where they're ready to head yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, where is a median step or a midpoint step for anyone who desires to start shifting into understanding their authentic self, but doesn't desire to lose all that they currently know? Because I know just from the circles that I run in, there are a lot of people who will say, oh, once I got to know who I was authentically, I am not the same person and there is no going back. And that can be overwhelming to hear.
Sure.
I mean, it's a lot to take in from a personal standpoint. Or here we are talking about business and saying, okay, you have to authentically know what drives the passion behind your business. Well, for any business that hasn't necessarily had that as their directive in the past, that's a big quantum leap, right? So there have to be steps to getting there. And I know from our side, we're always 1,000% on, take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
We're not saying go from here to here unless, you are in for that quantum leap and that's what you really desire to do. But let's start with business, since we've talked so much on personal.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a company that says, okay, you know what, I am buying into this heart leader approach, and I would like my organization to start looking into being a heart leader based type organization, can you say one first step that they could take to really understand authenticity from a heart leader perspective?
I feel that, just like anything, there's more than one way to approach it. So, for me, I would feel that it's very similar to the personal and how I would approach it. And if it was personally, I would look at it from the inside, get to know myself. Well, as a business, going back to the basics, getting to know the self of business. What's the mission? What's the vision? What's the purpose? What is the process? These all, when they're all aligned, it makes it a lot easier to be able to communicate a sense of culture and an understanding. And then there's some common goals that everyone that's a part of that business has. And then they can work as a team and from that place of common goals to create the results that they would like. So that's why I feel, I mean, that's a really simplified, and I understand that. But that's why I feel that just sometimes starting from the basics can be a great first step when it feels so overwhelming.
Yeah. So, and if you do have a clear and very well understood mission, vision, values, and everyone throughout the organization does understand that, which I love the inside out, then what is the culture that's built around that?
Yeah.
Does everyone have an understanding of the authentic nature of the organization? And are they aligned behind that?
Yeah.
Do they have a sense of purpose with the organization, or are they just coming in and doing their own individual thing, not in alignment with the greater purpose? And having worked for organizations where that is very much the case, where maybe at a higher level that mission, vision, values, the entire flow was well understood, but once it disseminated down, it really wasn't. There wasn't a clear understanding of, well, why am I doing this? How does it plug into that bigger picture? What does my part even matter? I know you're paying me, but why does it matter? That would be one area that I would offer personally would be very valuable for any organization, because every person desires to know, again, where they fit in. Where does my puzzle piece lend to the bigger picture? And so from an authenticity standpoint and from a heart leader standpoint as an organization, really being willing to show where each piece fits, so that then that inspires somebody. I know that what I'm doing, whether I'm writing code or I'm out on the sales force, I know how what I'm doing is taking our mission forward. And I feel a sense of purpose to that mission.
Right. Feel aligned.
Yeah.
It's a great point. Sometimes without that understanding, too many businesses are attempting to be too many things to too many other people, or whether it's their customers or their clients or other, B2B as well. They're attempting to do too much. They get spread thin, and then it gets parsed out, and then they lose their, the business culture loses self, and then it implodes because of that. It's happened time and time again.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful perspective of recognizing, well, what is that? What is the puzzle piece, and how that makes sense.
And I would say it's the same even for personal. You do have to take that first step. If you don't desire to completely revamp, what is one little area of yourself that you've always wanted to embrace? It's one space, not your whole life, but what's one space that you've always desired to embrace that maybe you haven't yet? Like, authentically, I know I've always desired to explore painting, or I've always desired to explore dancing, but I've never done it because I'm a little bit hesitant, or I'm a little bit nervous of what somebody else might think. How can you navigate into that? How can you honor the authentic pull within yourself? And what steps can you take? How can you set that as an intention? Right? So just start asking yourself the little steps. Is there anything that has always spoken to me, but I've never allowed myself to honor because I was worried about what the outside to in would think of me, what the perception would be? So there's at least a suggestion for a place to start. And we are always willing I know to assist individuals. We have a whole team here
Mm-hmm.
that if anybody has a question
Mm-hmm.
or would like any information about just a starting place, there's always a listening ear. We're a community. So post it, on the Facebook page, put it on the intention wall, on the website, anywhere.
Yeah.
There's a million places to ask and reach out for support. So,
Absolutely.
all right, as we're preparing to wrap up, is there anything else you want to share as we're kicking off this 2022?
I love the intention personally behind this New Year BU focus. Because the beauty of this, although it is a new calendar year, this concept of being you doesn't need to be related to any time of the year. It could be focused any day of any year, and it can provide so much growth and expansion that, just getting to know yourself, you'll never get bored, because we have so much more about ourselves that we aren't even allowing ourselves to even understand and experience. I know I've felt that time and time again, and it's a unique experience when you get to surprise your own self.
What?
Like, hey, I like this, or this is something that I enjoy. Like one of my recent ones was cycling. Never thought in a million years I would enjoy that, and now I get to do that with you and my dad, and it's opened up a whole new experience and level of connection, doing something I never thought I would do. And if I had been stuck in my old ways, I would have blocked myself from that type of love, experience, and depth. And so that's why this a New Year BU, or just simply focusing on being you, the authentic version of yourself, is just so life-changing.
Well, I'm glad that you'll go cycling. It's a great way to be outside. So thank you for opening me up to it again.
How about for you?
Ultimately, I would say honor. If resolutions fit for someone, then they should honor that. We're not saying don't set New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Just don't allow patterns and cycles to dominate your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to step back out of habit patterns and say, do I choose to keep doing that because it's serving me?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I not choose to do it because it hasn't served me and now I'm doing something else because that's what I choose to do?
Mm-hmm.
So part of being you is honoring that. If resolutions do fit for you, set resolutions. If it's something that you truly enjoy it. But if it has had an impact on you that is not helpful and has caused you to reinvent yourself and feel like you failed year after year after year, then stop doing it. It's not helpful. And be willing to say that to yourself. And then authentically step back and say, what will help me? And how do I get to a point where I know what I desire? And do it because you made the choice. Not because your inbox is being bombarded. And I know, because I used to own a fitness center or co-own a fitness center, and I was part of the whole program. I know, and I'm sorry to anyone and everyone who ever received an email from me like New Year, New You. It's your chance to cash in on this whole reinventing who you are. Don't do it because you're getting bombarded from the outside to do so. Do it because you're choosing from the inside to do so.
I love it.
That would be mine.
That's a great advice to end on here.
Awesome. Well, we want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in each and every week to our podcast, the Heart Leader Podcast. I am your host, Amber, and this is Austin, and we really look forward to hearing how you utilize the intention setting journal and how you choose to be you in this new year. Until next time, we cannot wait to see you in the Suivera community.